The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, broadcast across every frequency humanity had ever used. It interrupted emergency broadcasts, hijacked satellite feeds, and even wormed its way into civilian radio stations. The voice that spoke was neither male nor female, translated through some universal algorithm that made it sound almost pleasant, like a customer service representative delivering terrible news with a smile. Species designation: human. Planet designation: Earth. You have been assessed by the Galactic Concordance and found to be developing prohibited technologies. You have 7 of your planetary rotations to dismantle all faster-than-light research, surrender your orbital defense platforms, and present yourselves for integration into the Concordance labor pool. Failure to comply will result in planetary sterilization. This message will not repeat. But of course, it did repeat. For 6 hours straight, until every human being on the planet had heard it at least once. Admiral Catherine Kate Morrison was 53 years old and had spent 30 of those years serving in the United Earth Space Command. She had commanded destroyers during the Mars Independence Crisis, led the task force that established humanity's first extrasolar colony at Proxima Centauri, and personally negotiated the surrender of the Titan separatists without firing a single shot. She had seen things that would break lesser officers: the vacuum casualties of the Belt War, the radiation sickness that swept through the mining colonies, the children orphaned by corporate negligence in the outer system. None of it had prepared her for this. She stood in the war room of the UESC Resolute, humanity's largest battleship and the flagship of the home fleet, watching the tactical display with eyes that had gone cold and calculating. The alien fleet had emerged from something the eggheads were calling a fold point, a tier in spacetime that their FTL drives apparently created. 347 ships, ranging from Corvette-sized patrol craft to something roughly the size of Manhattan that the analysts were tentatively calling a dreadnought. "Admiral," said Commander Daniel Park, her executive officer, "the Joint Chiefs are requesting your assessment." Kate didn't look away from the display. "My assessment is that we're looking at a force that could crack Earth like an egg if we let them. Their energy signatures suggest weapons capabilities at least 2 generations ahead of our own. Their shields are eating our sensor pings like appetizers. So we can't win." Kate finally turned to face him, and something in her expression made the younger officer take an involuntary step backward. "I didn't say that, Commander. I said their technology is superior. That's not the same thing." She walked to the main display and began manipulating the holographic controls, pulling up data streams from across the solar system. "What do we know about these Concordance bastards? They've been around for, what did the transmission say? 12,000 years. 12,000 years of galactic civilization, and they've apparently spent that entire time bullying younger species into submission. The xenolinguists have been analyzing their communication patterns," Park offered. "They seem to operate on a strict hierarchical model. Species are ranked by age and technological development. The older species give orders, the younger species obey. And what happens to species that don't obey?" Park's jaw tightened. "Based on the subtext in their transmissions and some intercepted internal communications, the answer appears to be extinction. They've done it before, many times." Kate nodded slowly, her mind already racing through possibilities. 12,000 years of being the biggest fish in the pond. 12,000 years of species rolling over and showing their bellies the moment the Concordance showed up with their fancy ships and their ultimatums. She smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "I wonder if anyone's ever told them no." The emergency session of the United Earth Parliament lasted 14 hours. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every orbital habitat screamed at each other across holographic links while the alien fleet sat in high orbit around Neptune, waiting for humanity's answer. Some argued for compliance. The Concordance was simply too powerful, they said. Better to survive as a subject species than to be wiped out entirely. Perhaps, given time, humanity could work its way up the hierarchy, earn greater freedoms, eventually achieve something like equality. Others screamed for defiance. Better to die on their feet than live on their knees. Earth had faced existential threats before, the climate collapse of the 22nd century, the AI uprising of 2187, the plague years that followed, and humanity had survived them all. They would survive this too, or they would go down fighting. The deciding vote came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lisa Chen, humanity's foremost expert on theoretical physics and the architect of the FTL program that had apparently caught the Concordance's attention, requested the floor. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with gray-streaked hair and the kind of quiet intensity that made people instinctively lean in when she spoke. "Distinguished representatives," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I have spent my entire career trying to unlock the secrets of faster-than-light travel. I have devoted my life to giving humanity the stars. And now you're asking me if we should throw all of that away because some 12,000-year-old bureaucracy has decided we're not allowed to have it." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Let me tell you something about physics. The universe doesn't care about hierarchies. It doesn't care about age or tradition or who got there first. The laws of physics are the same for everyone, for the Concordance with their 12,000 years of civilization, and for humanity with our few centuries of spaceflight. Matter and energy behave the same way whether you're firing a human railgun or an alien particle beam." She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "The Concordance has better technology than we do. That's true, but technology can be learned, reverse-engineered, improved upon. What they don't have, what they clearly haven't had for thousands of years, is any real competition. They've been top dog for so long that they've forgotten what it feels like to fight for survival. They've forgotten what desperation looks like. Humanity hasn't forgotten. We've been fighting for survival since we crawled out of the primordial soup. We've survived ice ages and asteroid impacts and diseases that killed half our population. We've survived ourselves, which might be the most impressive achievement of all. And every single time we've been pushed to the brink, we've come back stronger." She stood up straight, her small frame somehow filling the entire chamber. "The Concordance wants us to kneel. I say we show them what happens when you try to put a collar on a species that spent its entire evolutionary history clawing its way to the top of the food chain." The vote wasn't even close. The response humanity sent to the Concordance fleet was simple and direct, broadcast on the same frequency they had used for their ultimatum. "This is Admiral Catherine Morrison of the United Earth Space Command, speaking on behalf of the human species. We have received your demands and deliberated upon them according to our customs. Our answer is as follows. No, we will not dismantle our research. We will not surrender our defenses. We will not present ourselves for integration into your labor pool. Earth belongs to humanity and it will remain so. If you want our planet, you're going to have to take it from us, and I promise you we will make you bleed for every inch." There was a long pause before the Concordance responded. "Species designation, human. Your response has been logged. You have chosen extinction. The Concordance grieves for the loss of potential labor resources. Sterilization will commence in 6 of your planetary rotations." Kate smiled at the transmission, her expression wolfish. 6 days, she murmured. "That's more than enough." The next 6 days were the most intensive mobilization in human history. Every shipyard in the solar system ran at maximum capacity. Every factory that could be converted to military production was converted. Every scientist, engineer, and technician who had ever worked on anything remotely related to weapons research was conscripted into a crash program to find any advantage, no matter how small, that could be used against the alien fleet. The civilian population was evacuated from major cities and relocated to deep underground bunkers that had been built during the plague years. Those who couldn't fight helped in other ways, manufacturing supplies, maintaining communication networks, caring for the children and elderly who had been moved to safety. And in hidden facilities across the solar system, humanity's best minds worked on a project that had been classified at the highest levels of secrecy. Dr. Chen had not been idle in the years since her FTL breakthrough. She had been working on something else, something that the government had kept under wraps because they weren't sure what the implications would be, something that in the face of extinction might just level the playing field. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, commander of the UESC Defiant, was reviewing the tactical briefing when his communications officer interrupted him. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Morrison. It's flagged as Phoenix Protocol." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. He had heard rumors about Phoenix Protocol, whispers among the senior officers about a last resort option that sounded too fantastical to be real. He had dismissed them as morale-boosting mythology, the kind of thing desperate soldiers told each other to keep hope alive. "Put it through." Admiral Morrison's face appeared on his screen, and Marcus was struck by how calm she looked. Not resigned, not defeated, simply calm, like a woman who had made her peace with what was coming. "Captain Rodriguez," she said, "the Concordance fleet is moving. They've broken orbit around Neptune and are heading for the inner system. They'll reach Earth in approximately 18 hours. "Understood, Admiral. The Defiant is ready." "I know you are, Captain, but I'm not calling to discuss defensive positions. I'm calling to tell you that Phoenix Protocol is real and it's ready to deploy." Marcus leaned forward. "Admiral, Dr. Chen's team completed the final calibrations 3 hours ago. We have 17 NOVA devices ready for deployment, each one capable of inducing a stellar ignition event in any hydrogen-rich environment." "Stellar ignition?" Marcus trailed off as the implications hit him. "You mean artificial suns?" "Temporary ones, yes. The effect only lasts for a few seconds, but during those few seconds, anything within the blast radius is subjected to the same conditions as the core of a star. No shields, no armor, no technology in the known universe can survive that kind of energy output." Marcus sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. "How do we deliver them?" "That's where you come in, Captain. The devices are too large to be mounted on missiles, and their activation sequence requires precise calibration that can't be handled by automated systems. We need pilots willing to fly the delivery ships, modified heavy transports with enhanced FTL drives that can jump directly into the middle of the enemy formation." "Suicide missions. Sacrifice missions," Kate corrected gently. "I won't lie to you, Captain. The pilots won't survive, but their deaths will take a significant portion of the enemy fleet with them, and that might be enough to give the rest of us a fighting chance." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "How many volunteers do you need?" "We have 17 devices. We need 17 pilots." "You have 18, Admiral. I'm volunteering." Kate's expression softened. "Thank you, Captain, but I need you commanding the Defiant. Your crew needs you." "Then let me ask for volunteers from among them. These are good people, Admiral. They deserve the chance to make this choice for themselves." "Agreed. You have 2 hours." Marcus expected to spend those 2 hours trying to convince his crew to volunteer for what amounted to certain death. Instead, he spent them trying to narrow down the list of volunteers to a manageable number. Every single member of the Defiant's crew stepped forward. In the end, he selected Lieutenant Commander Amy Blackwood, his best pilot and a woman who had lost her entire family during the plague years. She had no one left to mourn her, she told him, but she could make damn sure that no one else had to lose their families to these alien bastards. Similar scenes played out across the fleet. Within hours, all 17 positions were filled, with thousands more volunteering as backups. Admiral Morrison addressed the entire human race one final time before the battle. "People of Earth and all human territories," she said, her voice steady and clear. "In a few hours, we will face the greatest threat our species has ever known. An enemy that has conquered countless worlds, exterminated countless species, and built an empire on the ashes of civilizations they deemed unworthy of existence. They believe they are superior to us. They believe that their age and their technology give them the right to dictate our fate. They believe that we will break, that we will bow, that we will accept the collar they wish to place around our necks. They are wrong. Humanity has faced extinction before. We have looked into the abyss and refused to blink. We have crawled through darkness and emerged into light. We have fought against nature, against disease, against each other, and we have survived. Not because we were the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, but because we refused to give up. Because when the universe pushed us, we pushed back harder. Today, we push back again. Today, we show the Concordance and every other species watching that humanity will not kneel. We will not surrender. We will not go quietly into the night. Today, we light the stars on fire. The Concordance fleet approached Earth in a formation that their tactical manuals had used successfully for 10,000 years. The dreadnought at the center, surrounded by concentric rings of cruisers and destroyers, with the smaller patrol craft forming a screening perimeter around the whole formation. It was a formation designed to project overwhelming force, to cow primitive species into submission before a single shot was fired. It had worked on the Veltrix, on the Mundari, on 17 other species that had tried to resist Concordance rule. It was not designed to deal with an enemy that didn't care about dying. Fleet Commander Voss of the Concordance observed the human defensive formation with something approaching curiosity. The primitives had arranged their pitiful fleet, barely 100 ships, most of them smaller than Concordance patrol craft, in a loose sphere around their home planet. They had activated their orbital defense platforms, for whatever good those would do against Concordance weapons. An interesting choice, Voss mused to his second in command. They appear to be attempting a distributed defense rather than concentrating their forces. Do they truly believe they can survive a war of attrition against us? Perhaps they hope to make the victory costly enough that we will reconsider, the subordinate suggested. Voss made a dismissive gesture with two of his 4 arms. 12,000 years of galactic dominance was not built by reconsidering. Begin the assault. Standard pacification protocol. The Concordance fleet opened fire, and the space between the two forces erupted in light. Human ships began to die. The UESC Valor took a direct hit to its reactor and vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. The Steadfast lost its engine section and began spinning helplessly into the void. The small patrol craft that formed the outer layer of Earth's defense were swatted aside like insects. But the humans didn't break. They didn't flee. They held their positions, pouring fire back at the Concordance fleet even as their ships were torn apart around them. Railgun slugs and missile salvos hammered against alien shields, not penetrating but forcing the Concordance ships to divert power to defensive systems. And then, at a signal from Admiral Morrison, 17 modified transports jumped into FTL. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood had always known she would die young. She had made her peace with that fact during the plague years, when she had watched her parents and siblings succumb to the disease while she somehow survived. She had spent the years since then living on borrowed time, searching for a cause worth dying for. She had found it. Her transport emerged from FTL in the exact center of the Concordance formation, less than a kilometer from the massive dreadnought that served as the enemy flagship. The alien point defense systems tracked her immediately, but they were designed to intercept missiles and fighters, not ships appearing from nowhere with suicidal precision. She had perhaps 3 seconds before they burned her out of the sky. It was enough. Phoenix 1, ignition, she said calmly, and pressed the activation button. The Nova device worked exactly as Dr. Chen had designed it. It created a bubble of compressed hydrogen around itself, and then, using principles of physics that the Concordance had never explored, forced that hydrogen to undergo fusion. For exactly 2.7 seconds, a new star blazed to life in the void between worlds. The Concordance dreadnought, a ship that had survived 1,000 battles and crushed 100 species beneath its guns, ceased to exist. Its shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic impacts, were simply inadequate to deal with temperatures measured in millions of degrees. The hull vaporized, then the internal structure, then the crew, all in the span of a heartbeat. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood died with them, but in that final moment she was smiling. 16 more stars blazed to life across the Concordance formation. Fleet Commander Voss had approximately 4 seconds to comprehend what was happening before the Nova wave from Phoenix 3 reached his cruiser. In those 4 seconds, he experienced something that no Concordance officer had felt in 10,000 years. Terror. The Concordance fleet lost 283 ships in the first attack, more than they had lost in the previous century of military operations combined. The dreadnought was gone, most of the cruisers were gone. The carefully maintained formation had been shattered into chaos, and the humans weren't done. Admiral Morrison's voice cut through the chaos of the battlefield. All ships advance, they're reeling, don't give them time to recover. The human fleet surged forward, and what followed was less a battle than a rout. The Concordance ships tried to reform, tried to bring their superior weapons to bear, but they were disorganized and demoralized. Half their command structure had been vaporized in the initial attack. The surviving officers were issuing contradictory orders, their communications networks clogged with panic damage reports and calls for retreat. The humans exploited every moment of confusion. Railgun slugs slammed into exposed hulls where shields had failed. Missile salvos targeted engine sections and weapons arrays. Boarding parties in armored shuttles latched onto crippled ships and began fighting their way inside. Captain Rodriguez led the Defiant into the heart of the enemy formation, her weapons blazing continuously. They took hit after hit, armor plating melting away under the punishment, but they kept fighting. When the main guns went offline, they switched to point defense weapons. When those failed, Rodriguez ordered ramming speed. The Defiant struck a Concordance cruiser amidships, the impact crumpling both ships like tin cans. Rodriguez and most of his crew didn't survive, but neither did the 300 Concordance personnel aboard their target. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships, outmatched and outgunned, threw themselves at the enemy with a ferocity that the Concordance had never encountered. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like cornered animals, like parents defending their children, like a species that had decided that death was preferable to submission. The Concordance broke. The surviving ships, barely 60 out of the original 347, turned and fled toward the outer system, their drives pushing them toward escape velocity and the fold point that would take them back to Concordance space. They left behind the shattered remains of their fleet, the cooling debris of their flagship, and something far more significant, their reputation. For 12,000 years, the Concordance had ruled the galaxy through fear. Species submitted because they believed resistance was impossible, because the Concordance's military might was overwhelming, because no one had ever successfully defied them. That myth died in the space around Earth, burned away by 17 artificial suns. Admiral Morrison surveyed the aftermath from the bridge of the Resolute, which had somehow survived the battle with only moderate damage. The tactical display was still updating, cataloging the wreckage that now filled Earth orbit. Human ships. Concordance ships, the hulks of vessels from both sides twisted together in death. Casualty reports are coming in, Admiral, Commander Park said quietly. We lost 63 ships, 14,000 personnel. Kate closed her eyes for a moment. 14,000 lives, 14,000 families that would receive the worst news imaginable, 14,000 names that would be added to the memorial they would build when this was over. And the Concordance. 287 ships destroyed or disabled. We estimate their casualties at over 200,000. The survivors are retreating at maximum speed. Kate opened her eyes. 200,000 Concordance dead for 14,000 humans. In military terms, it was a victory beyond anything they could have hoped for. In human terms, it was a tragedy that would scar them for generations. Track the retreating ships, she ordered. I want to know exactly where they're going. And get me a line to the Parliament. We need to start preparing for what comes next. Admiral, Park looked confused. We won. The Concordance is retreating. We won a battle, Commander. The war is just beginning. Kate turned to face him, her expression grave. The Concordance has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. They're not going to accept this defeat and go quietly. They're going to come back with a larger fleet, better weapons, and a burning desire for revenge. We need to be ready. And, she added, a hint of something like hope entering her voice, we need to reach out to the other species they've conquered, show them what we did here, show them that the Concordance can be beaten. You want to start a rebellion, Admiral? Kate smiled, and for the first time since this crisis began, there was genuine warmth in it. I want to start a revolution, Commander. The Concordance built their empire on the belief that resistance is futile. We just proved that belief is a lie. It's time to share that lesson with the rest of the galaxy. The message humanity broadcast in the aftermath of the Battle of Earth was picked up by listening posts across the galaxy. It was translated into 1,000 languages, analyzed by 1,000 intelligence agencies, discussed in 1,000 hidden councils where subjugated species gathered to whisper their dreams of freedom. This is Admiral Catherine Morrison of the United Earth Space Command. 6 days ago, the Galactic Concordance ordered humanity to kneel. We refused. They sent a fleet to destroy us. We destroyed them instead. 287 Concordance warships now drift as wreckage in orbit around our home world, a testament to what happens when you underestimate a species fighting for its survival. We send this message not as a boast but as a promise. To the Concordance, we do not want war. We do not seek your destruction. But we will not submit, we will not surrender, and we will not kneel. Any fleet you send against us will be met with the same fury that destroyed your first Armada. The age of your dominion is over. To the other species of this galaxy, those who have been conquered and subjugated and told that resistance is impossible, it is not. The Concordance can be beaten. We have proven it. Have the courage to stand up, to fight for your freedom, to refuse the collar they have placed around your necks. Then you will not stand alone. Humanity will stand with you. The galaxy ordered Earth to kneel. This is our answer. The recording ended with a visual, the wreckage of the Concordance fleet, backlit by the blue sphere of Earth with 17 new stars still fading in the distance. Across the galaxy, species that had accepted Concordance rule for generations began to whisper, to hope, to plan. And on 100 conquered worlds, for the first time in 10,000 years, the fires of rebellion began to burn. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, Dr. Lisa Chen stood in the newly constructed Memorial Plaza that had been built in the ruins of what had once been Geneva's old town. The 17 pillars that rose from the plaza's center represented the 17 pilots who had given their lives in the Phoenix Protocol deployment, their names carved into black marble that would endure for centuries. She placed a flower at the base of the pillar dedicated to Lieutenant Commander Amy Blackwood, who had been the first to ignite, the first to strike the blow that had shattered the myth of Concordance invincibility. The analysis of the Concordance wreckage is complete, said her assistant, a young man named Eric Sullivan who had lost his brother in the battle. Their FTL technology is different from ours, but not better. It's actually less efficient in some ways. They never developed the compression drive because they went down a different technological path. And their weapons, more powerful than ours, but we're already working on countermeasures. Give us a year and we'll have shields that can withstand their particle beams. Give us 2 years and we'll have weapons that can match them. Lisa nodded slowly. What about their communications? Were we able to intercept anything useful? Eric's expression shifted to something between excitement and disbelief. That's actually why I came to find you. The intelligence division cracked their encryption last night. The Concordance has been in contact with their central government about what happened here. And they're terrified. Eric's voice dropped to a whisper, as if he could barely believe what he was saying. Not just of our weapons, but of what our victory means. They've received reports of unrest on 7 worlds, open rebellion on 3 others. Species that have been docile for centuries are suddenly asking questions, demanding freedoms, citing our example. Lisa looked up at the 17 pillars, at the names of the men and women who had sacrificed everything to give humanity a chance. So it's working. The revolution is spreading. Faster than anyone expected. The Concordance is pulling fleets back from the frontier to deal with internal problems. They can't afford to send another armada against us, not while their empire is crumbling from within. They'll come eventually. When they've stabilized, when they've crushed the rebellions, they'll want revenge. By then, we'll be ready. Eric's jaw set with determination. And we won't be fighting alone. The Mundari have already made contact. They want to ally with us. The Veltrix are considering the same. There are others, species we've never heard of, reaching out through back channels. Lisa smiled, the first genuine smile that had crossed her face since before the ultimatum. They told us to kneel and we said no. Now the whole galaxy is learning to say no. She touched Lieutenant Commander Blackwood's pillar one more time, her fingers tracing the carved letters of the pilot's name. "Thank you," she whispered. "All of you. You lit the fire. Now we'll make sure it never goes out. Admiral Morrison retired from active service 3 years after the Battle of Earth, passing command of what was now called the Allied Fleet to a new generation of officers who had been forged in the fires of the Concordance War. She spent her remaining years writing a memoir titled Defiance: How Humanity Learned to Burn Stars, and consulting on the reconstruction efforts that were transforming Earth into the capital of a growing interstellar coalition. She lived long enough to see the Concordance sue for peace, their 12,000-year empire finally acknowledging that the old order had ended. The treaty that followed wasn't perfect, nothing created by fallible beings ever is, but it established humanity and its allies as equals in the galactic community, free to develop their own technology, chart their own course among the stars, and never again kneel to anyone. On the day she died at the age of 87, surrounded by family and former colleagues, her last words were simple and fitting. We showed them all. The memorial that was built in her honor stood beside the 17 pillars of the Phoenix Protocol pilots, a statue of a woman in a naval uniform looking up at the stars with an expression of fierce determination. The inscription at its base was taken from her final broadcast during the battle, the words that had rallied humanity in its darkest hour and inspired a galaxy to rise up against tyranny. Today, we light the stars on fire, and so they had. And so, in a very real sense, the stars were still burning, not with destruction but with the light of freedom that humanity had kindled and would never allow to be extinguished. The galaxy had ordered Earth to kneel. Humanity had answered with fire, and nothing would ever be the same again. The end.